Okay. So, hello, this is Caroline McEnroy. I'm so happy to have you on our platform today. We are hosting you in our NILE-TESOL SIG, which is a research special interest group that stems out of 9 different SIGs that NILE-TESOL provides in order to support English teachers all across Egypt. I'm so happy to have you today, and please feel free to introduce yourself to your audience, please.
Hey, so my name's Caroline Beckett. McEnroy is my sister, Garda. So I'm Caroline Beckett, that's no problem. I started out my career as an English teacher. My degree is in English and philosophy, and then I did a year's postgraduate qualification in English teaching. So I taught in schools and colleges in the UK. And then also internationally. So I was head of English, for example, at the British School in Muscat and at the English College in Dubai. I taught in Cairo many years ago. I was there for 3 years, 2008 to 2011. And I've taught in Bahrain. And also I was involved in a project in Riyadh, which was setting up a college for ladies. An English language college for ladies. So I was director of learning there, and we set up the curriculum with the Ministry of Education, etc. So in terms of English literature and language teaching, I've got more than 20 years experience. But 10 years ago was the last time that I taught full-time in a school or a college. That's the point in my career where I started to, having completed my master's, which is in leadership and management in international education, I decided to diversify a little, and I started embarking on the journey to become a certified coach. So it's largely coaching work that I do now. I coach international school leaders from around the world, from everywhere between Chile in South America to China in Asia, and honestly almost everywhere in between. So I still work an awful lot with school and college leaders and educators. My coaching experience spans almost a decade. I'm now a master certified coach with International Coaching Federation, which is the international body most recognized throughout the world, the professional body. As I said, I do one-to-one and team coaching, but I'm also a registered ICF mentor. So I help new coaches and also existing coaches work towards credentialing and professional development. And I'm also a coach supervisor, so helping coaches that are already coaching work to further improve their professional practices and competencies. So Garda, in as briefly as I could, that's my experience so far.
We're honored to have you today, Caroline.
That's very kind.
Extremely lucky to have you, and I'm sure you're going to contribute a lot to our awareness and understanding of coaching and how it can help us as teachers, especially in the workplace. And leaders, of course. So we do have academic educators here as well.
So coaching, in terms of education, there are different uses for it. I'm not suggesting that everybody should become a certified coach, but what I endorse is using some coaching skills with our students, our direct reports if we're leaders, and also with our peers if we are in a leadership position. So it can be great working using coaching skills and competencies with students, because it's very empowering, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And it's also a great leadership tool. If you look in terms of coaching in the business sector, it's used by the vast majority of the Fortune 500 companies, for example, because it's recognized as a really useful and empowering tool. Rather than managing, we're leading people and we're enabling them to reach their own potential by supporting them and giving them space.
Yeah. This is true. Yeah.
So if it's okay with Garda, I'll share my PowerPoint. It's very brief, but it will hopefully give everybody an overview of what coaching is and how coaching works, and how that's hopefully beneficial for you today as educators. So my business is jigsaw.coach. So you can find me online and on social media, and you can look at some of the work that I've completed around the world. I'd like you to, if you can, in the chat, just pop down your name and where you are from. It would be great to find out where you are from in the world, so that we can say hello, just so we can connect a little bit. It would be great also if I knew what you knew about coaching. So Garda, it would be great if you could tell us a little bit about your experience of coaching as an educator. How have you found it?
Actually, I found it so enriching. I think it was like something like the normal development to soft skills. I mean, I've been teaching like 20 years now. And I remember like once I started, I was doing all this self-development plans for teachers and doing the blended learning and blah, blah, blah. And then I started seeing that this was not enough. We should do some time management along with some communication skills. But that was like 20 years ago. Now I found that maybe coaching is the new soft skills thing. It's like more of listening and more of connecting genuinely to people, more of empowering them and allowing safe spaces, as you actually said. It's really empowering for the team. It works wonders when people take up this mindset of connection, of safety, of empowerment. It actually works wonders. Yes. So I think it has a lot of fruit. Yeah. And it's still novice. It's a novice area. I think it's not very well trodden all across the world, not just here. So not so many educators are aware of that. But if it happens, it will be actually a graceful thing.
Absolutely. I know that Dr. Claire, my colleague, she came across to Cairo maybe 4 years ago to speak for Cambridge Education to schools that deliver their curriculum. And she was speaking to them about coaching and the benefits of coaching. So it is in education in its infancy, whereas in the business sector, it's much more embedded now in how business works in terms of performance management, key performance indicators, and developing people. So yeah, why is education a little bit further behind? Well, as educators, often we are in the role of a mentor because we already know.
Please mute yourself. Yeah.
So we already, thank you, Nisreen. We already, as educators, we know we know things because we've been there and we've done it. We've been in school, we've been in university and college, we've done these qualifications, we know what the curriculum is, we know what they need to learn, we know what the exams are going to be like. So as an educator, we are often in that mentor role. So the mentor is up here and the student is down here and aiming, you know, looking up to their mentor, their teacher, their professor, their supervisor for guidance. When we mark work, we give points for improvement. So we know what needs to be done. And that really is the mentor being up here and the student being down here. With coaching, and that's why I've chosen this this image, because the mentor is leading and very much at the front. And also purple, Benefsiji, is my favorite color. So I particularly like that, that image. Coaching is slightly different. And as a former educator, a former full-time educator, it did take a shift for me to change my mindset. If we are mentoring, we're very comfortable in that safe space. We know what we're doing. If we're coaching, it means that we're giving up, we're reneging some of that power and authority, really. And we're going to a relationship which is a little bit more equal. And that can be territory which is a little bit uncomfortable for educators, because it's not necessarily territory where we feel completely comfortable. But a coaching relationship is one built on trust and openness. And it's one where the coach and the coachee are much more equal. So we've got this phrase here, leaning in, where they lean into the relationship so they can both gain something from it. It's a space where educators ask more questions, but also need to be very conscious that they are listening not just to the things that they want to hear, but also to the other things which are being said. So it is a skill which can be developed, but it does take a little bit of time, and it does take a little bit of shift in our mindset as educators to get to that point where we feel more comfortable with our students, or with our team if we're leaders in education, for example. So it doesn't happen overnight. And also, it would be very strange if you're a leader of an educational team to suddenly completely shift the way that you do things. So if you are going to start using coaching skills, what's really good, it's a really good idea to actually explain to people, look, I've been doing this training and I think this would be really helpful. And this is what coaching means. Because not everybody understands what coaching is. I've got a short video to show you. And, it mentions, we all know, you get coaches in football, for example, or coaches for cricket. And there are lots of people out there in the world that call themselves coaches. But coaching, and what I'm talking about today, and the skills that educators will be able to use with their students, that's a different thing. So I've got a short video to show you, which I hope will just help to clarify the distinction between coaching and mentoring. It also mentions things like therapy and consulting. So coaches are not therapists. We are not counselors. We are not psychiatrists or psychologists. Professional coaches are in a different area. So it would be great if you could watch this video. And if you could, in the chat, Garda can read out any of your questions that you have once we've completed it.
When you hear the word coaching, what springs to mind? Football coach? Acting coach? Vocal coach? Maybe even a financial coach? Confusing, isn't it? Well, coach has become such a popular title that it's being used by lots of professions, often with no training. And sometimes coaching is just a fancy way of saying, I'll ask you a few questions and then tell you what I think you should do. Well, let's clear the air a little bit about coaching. Coaching is often confused with therapy, consulting, and mentoring. Now, those are great helping professions, but they're not professional coaching. Here's the difference. Therapists focus on the past and work to fix what's broken. Consultants provide quantitative analysis and create roadmaps for organizational change. They get paid to provide answers. Mentors help those with less experience. Mentors are already experts in their field and are helping others reach success. Now, there may be some overlaps in approach, but none of these are professional coaching. Professional coaching is a different type of conversation. There's a whole lot of asking and not much telling. Professional coaches are focused on you, helping you design your future, your goals. They're thought-provoking and inspirational. You work on your topic. A professional coach focuses on you. Professional coaches are also discerning listeners, empathetic, creative, intuitive, and curious. They're trained in coaching behaviors and competencies, which makes them really good coaches, and they're bound by professional standards and ethics. A professional coach will be your partner, your advocate, your champion.
As I said, teachers and educators are often very comfortable in that field of being a mentor. And as I said at the beginning of the session, I'm not endorsing everybody who's an educator to become a professionally certified coach. But the skills that coaches use can be really beneficial for educators. Let me give you an example. We know as educators what needs to be covered in a curriculum so that students will be successful in their summative assessment. What might happen if you actually said to your students using some coaching questions? So this is the topic that we've got to cover. What is it that you'd really like to learn? What would you like to come away with at the end of this unit? We know what we've got to cover, but what is it that you're most curious about? How valuable would that be as an educator, that you then would have that inspiration, that knowledge that would engage them because you know where they're coming from? And it's quite an easy question, it's a set of easy questions to ask. But that's how coaching can empower people, because it's not just, here's what we have to learn. It's, this is what we need to cover. What do you want to get out of it? What's important to you? What do you think of that, Garda?
I think actually this is very, it's elaborative. It's beautiful how you actually draw the lines between what's coaching, mentoring, and therapy. At one point, it helps us identify what is the actual needs area that we can connect to. And the other thing is like, it gives you the promise of maybe coaching is like, it keeps the confidentiality of people. It keeps us independent. So I'm not seeking advice. Nobody's going to impose things on me. It's just like, it's like aid on the self-discovery journey that we embark on. Like
Absolutely,
teachers are
Garda.
mostly courageous, you know, it's like, it's nice. Coaching is actually a very helpful tool.
And I'm not saying that all educators should shift completely to be working in a coaching style, because sometimes we are the expert, we are up here, and we do need to give support and guidance and you know, direct instructions. Of course we do, because that's the sphere that we're working in. And what I would love to get across today is how coaching could further enhance what we do as educators. Not being professional coaches, but using skills that coaches use with our students and our peers and those that we are in charge of in terms of, you know, leadership positions, how that would change the dynamic and how it might make things even more interesting and even more effective. So our next slide, I'm just going to pop it out there. I'd just like you to take a few moments just to read. This is the international body that I chose to do all my certification through International Coaching Federation, based in the States. Please just take a few moments to read over their definitions of coaching. One word which features in both of those definitions is the word partner or partnering or partnership. And where, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, the mentor is up here and the student is usually down here, or the manager is up here and their subordinate is down here. With coaching, we become much more equal. We're on more of an equal footing and we work together towards a common goal. And in education, that common goal might be to, you know, improve their performance, you know, improve the students' performance, or it might be to deepen their learning on a topic that you're studying, or it might be to deepen their learning about themselves and what they want to learn. So there's lots of different things that we can do with coaching skills. And what I'd like to do for the remainder of this session, will probably take around 10 minutes, is just to talk through the main 3 things which I think are really important in terms of coaching skills for educators. This is very much an introduction. We can't cover everything, but I'd just like to give you a taster of the types of things that might be helpful for you. You can go away and do some research, learn more about it, ask Garda lots of questions, get in touch with me. And I can also see on the call, we've got Dr. Lawrence Brown. So I think Dr. Lawrence also is an educator. We can bring him in maybe at the end if he feels comfortable, and he can tell us what he thinks about coaching in education, a very valuable resource there. Welcome, Lawrence. The first thing that we need to do if we are going to start using coaching skills with our students is to ensure that everybody understands what coaching is. We need to ensure that they understand the distinction between coaching and mentoring and how your style might be changing a little bit. Okay. And then the second thing is we need to create a safe space, because if students are going to start to tell you things that maybe previously they hadn't, for example, what they would like to learn or what they're unsure about, then they need to feel safe in that space asking those questions. So when we build an alliance, it means building a way of working together. So as a cornerstone of coaching, that's essential. It's absolutely essential that we have that understanding between us as a tutor group as a faculty of how we're going to create a safe space where everybody feels confident, comfortable, and able to say what they need to say or ask what they would like to ask. So that's the first thing. If we aren't allowed to show a little vulnerability, if we're not allowed to show that we're a little uncertain or unsure about things, then coaching doesn't work well at all. So that's the first cornerstone of coaching. Secondly, it's questioning skills. Now, as educators, I found when delivering coach training, educators are usually pretty good with their questioning skills because we ask questions all the time as part of our profession. We try with coaching to avoid those short, closed questions. So, do you know the answer to this? Yes or no? Did you have a nice holiday? Yes or no? So we try not to ask those short, brief questions, which will elicit maybe just a 1 or 2 word response. What we're aiming to do is ask open questions. So instead of saying, did you enjoy your holiday, which might give a yes or a no answer, we might say, what did you enjoy about your holiday? So often our questioning is prefixed with words like who or what or why. So you'll hear that a lot in coaching conversations. So as educators, we're often pretty good at this already. And probably, I'm making an assumption here, which I shouldn't as a coach, but I'm assuming that quite a number of educators will also be familiar with the idea of Socratic questioning. And actually coaching and coaching questions is heavily based on Socratic questioning in itself. So Socrates, the old ancient Greek philosopher, said, the discipline that Socratic questioning is the disciplined practice of thoughtful questioning, which enables the student or scholar to examine ideas and be able to determine the validity of those ideas. So the basis of Socratic questioning is really to explore complex ideas, which is why we need open questions. We don't want to just test their knowledge. We want to open up avenues of exploration for the particular topics that we're teaching. We need to be able to, with Socratic questioning, overcome assumptions and distinguish what we know from what we don't know, what's fact and what's opinion, what's truth and what's not. So scholars, educators are often already pretty good at this. So that's a skill which we can really fine tune and hone in on in order to start using these coaching skills with our students or our peers. So I have another very short video to show you, which just explains a little bit more about Socratic questioning, because not everybody may have covered it. So I thought it's maybe 2 minutes, this video, which will just kind of outline what Socratic questioning is. And we'll talk a little bit about at the end about how we can further use this within our coaching. Garda, before I press play, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me?
So the floor is open here. Does anyone have a question? It's amazing, Caroline. It's amazing. Just like, go ahead. Thank you.
So I would love to invite people in the chat to just pop their questions in, and then Garda can communicate those with me. For now, we'll watch the video. It gives everybody time to think.
How to use the Socratic method. The Socratic method is a process of dialogue based on questioning that inspires critical thinking and analysis. Primarily, the method was designed for moral and philosophical inquiry, but the technique can be used in almost any discussion. It helps to structure constructive and even challenging conversations without descending into argument or pure rhetoric. Here are the 5 steps to follow to have a Socratic dialogue. Number 1. Receive. First, receive what the other person has to say. Listen to the other person's premise, view, or argument. And remember, you have to properly listen at this stage to be able to do the next step. 2. Reflect. Sum up the person's viewpoint or argument and reflect it back. Do this by first getting them to clarify and sum up their position, and then by paraphrasing or repeating it back to them. 3. Refine. Ask them to provide their evidence. Find out why they are thinking or acting in that way. Discover the facts, beliefs, or assumptions that underpin their standpoint. Often the premise will be based on assumptions rather than hard facts. Assumptions are fine, but challenge these assumptions to test their validity. Use further questions to uncover fallacy or any wrong presuppositions. You can often use why questions at this stage to help with this. 4. Restate. Now that you have refined your thinking, get them to reformulate and restate their position. If they see that they had a wrong assumption, get them to adapt or renew their wording and then restate it. 5. Repeat. Now they have a new viewpoint, you can go back to the start of the process. You can assess the new premise and challenge any further wrong assumptions in their thinking. This iterative or dialectic process helps to drive the issue. This method becomes a cycle of dialogue. And that's it, simple. The question technique framework is easy to remember, and the skill comes in applying it. The challenge is to really listen to the other person and truly commit to coming to a better shared understanding of the issue. This may come through challenging assumptions or logical viewpoints, but the goal of the Socratic method is not about winning an argument. It is about finding understanding, knowledge, and truth. It's about getting to the heart of an idea. If you'd like more detail on this, how to...
Okay, so I'll just stop sharing just for a moment. It's about getting to the heart of the matter. And coaching, really, coaching skills and the philosophy of coaching is getting to the heart of the matter, whether that's in academic terms or in more personal terms, whether it's in business or it's in other contexts. It's getting to the bottom of what's really happening. Now, that could be part of the curriculum. It could be a way that you deliver the curriculum. It's really, really valuable. So rather than going for facts, we go for interpretations and we look at alternative perspectives, and it opens up a whole new world of learning. So building our alliance and building an environment where students and colleagues feel comfortable is key. That's the first thing we need to do so that they understand the distinction between mentoring and coaching and why you're suddenly asking them these questions, because it would be very strange to just suddenly start without the explanation and building that understanding. Then we need to think about how we're asking these questions, these open-ended questions which dive below the surface. So if we take facts up here, then what we do is we dive below the surface and we look at what else is going on, what other facts there might be, what other opinions there might be about this, what other scholars, what other professors might be saying about it, what other cultures might be saying about it and interpreting it in different ways. So in terms of using these coaching skills, these are really valuable both within the classroom, the lecture theatre, but also within meetings even. And I'll just pause, Garda, in case we have any questions. And if not, we'll move on to our final skill, which is listening.
Is there any questions? I have a question here, Dr. Lamia was
Sure.
sharing. She says she wants to see how it's like if coaching is not teaching, she wishes to see how people actually can have teachers as coaches. So how can a coach coach a coach? Okay, so this is her question. She wants to
No, I think that's a good,
happens.
thanks, Dr. Lamia. I think that's a really good question. Most coaches have a coach, but we're being coached on us as people and our professional practice. If we need assistance with our competencies, so looking at, for example, the ICF competencies or the markers in terms of our performance, then we would go to a mentor, because the mentor then has more knowledge, more expertise, and can provide specific guidance and advice. So a coach, remember, does not provide specific information, advice. We don't advise. We don't tell people what we think they should do. That's a different space. That's more in the mentoring space. So if I needed advice about my performance as a coach, then I would go to a mentor or even a supervisor maybe. A coach, Ramia, you've asked, is a coach just a guide? No. The only thing a coach will do is to guide you through the process of coaching. A coach is an expert in coaching skills. But I coach people from the financial sector, from logistics, as well as educators. I can't be an expert in every area that I coach. My expertise is in coaching skills. So I use my coaching skills, for example, building my alliance, asking the right sorts of questions, being present, creating a safe space. And as you can imagine, Dr. Lamia, there's so many different facets to this. There's so many different aspects of things that we can include. This is just a very brief introduction. We use all of those skills in order to provide a space for people to explore what they need to do. In the same way, educators can provide a space for students to explore what they feel they need to do to get better, rather than us telling them as mentors what we think they need to do. And as I said, sometimes students do need a mentor. That's the reality. I'm not endorsing that we switch completely, but we're talking about using some of these skills to further enhance our capacity as educators and as leaders. I hope that answered the question. Thank you. You're very welcome.
So before we move into the listening skills or set of skills, I was actually wondering about the context for education. So it's like all through you're talking, Caroline, about the teacher and the student, empowering the teacher and empowering the student. Now I'm like looking at this very trying moment in everybody's work environment. So it's like, maybe it's the bigger context for the teacher. It's like the kind of jobs he would choose to accept or to decline. It's the kind of connections that they are networking skills. And maybe it's the tension in the management and the changes, the quick changes in the chapters or ownership or shareholding boards. So there is always a context. It's not just like doing the thing within the, I think it's actually our classes are the safest part in the educational process.
You're absolutely right. And Garda, as I said, this way of being and doing, to use these coaching skills, it doesn't happen overnight. And if the people at the top don't understand, then it's going to be very, very difficult to roll it out. So if I go into a large organization that hasn't used coaching before, I would usually do half a day or at least a few hours with every single person that's working there to explain what coaching is and what coaching isn't. Because if you suddenly go in and start asking questions instead of giving instructions, people will wonder what on earth is going on. So you have to ensure that everybody has a clear understanding before you can really start to implement in terms of management. In terms of your classroom, as you said, it's much easier. Yeah, because you're the one who can do all the explaining and can start to just, put it into place. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Garda? Yeah. Okay. So I will continue on. This is our penultimate, our second to last slide. So we know we have to build our alliance. We need to build our safe space. We need to ensure in that alliance that people understand the distinction between coaching and mentoring and different ways of doing things and what to expect and what not to expect. We need to think about our questioning. So we need to ensure that we're using open questions. We're more empowering in terms of our students or our team if we're leading, so that they can have space to think about what they want to learn, what they feel their priorities are. And the third thing, which I feel is most important to talk about in this very brief introduction, is listening. So it's largely believed that there are 3 levels of listening. And I know that Garda will be able to provide you with this slide should you want to look at it in more detail and do some more reading around. But if we think about ourselves in everyday life, which I think is a good place to start, where are we usually? So are we internally listening, which means that we're being very, very selective and we're just picking up the bits that we like or we dislike, or the things that we think are important. And actually also, I'm hearing my voice a lot in here and what I think about it. probably equally or even more so than what's actually being said to me. And I'm also probably spending some time deciding whether I agree or disagree, what I think about it, what the strengths or the weaknesses are in what they're saying. So I'm almost cut in half of me listening, and then probably half of me isn't, because I'm listening to myself and my own thoughts. And then if we go up a bit, when we get to be slightly better listeners, we can be a bit more focused. So we are listening more carefully to what's being said, but we are still, so we're noticing a little bit more about what they're saying. We're probably noticing a little bit more about how they're saying it as well, but still we're formulating our own opinions. But our voice now is a little bit quieter. So let's say 25% is in here, I'm listening to myself, and maybe 75% I am listening to the other person, but it's not perfect. So focused listening is where we're trying more consciously to be attentive, to listen to what the person is saying. And if we get to the best, if you want gold stars, then we call it global listening. And global listening isn't just me listening to the words that people are saying. It's me focusing much more on the whole person. So for example, how they're sitting. Are they leaning forward? Do they have their arms crossed? They got their head on their hands? Are they looking a little bit uncomfortable? Are they speaking really, really quickly? Does that mean they're excited? Does it mean they're stressed? Are they quite laid back? Are there lots of pauses between what they're saying while they're thinking? So I'm noticing not just the words, but I'm noticing a lot more about what and how they're saying it. And if we are really going to try hard to be really good listeners, we need to be trying our best and being more conscious at the forefront of our minds to focus on what that person is saying. And as a coach, I often say when I'm training coaches, imagine what it's like for somebody to really listen to you. They're not on their phone. They're not listening out for somebody in the other room. They've not got the TV on in the background. They are wholly focused on you and what you're saying. And I say to coaches that I train, imagine that's the only time in their day or week or even month that somebody has truly listened to them. So that is a real power of coaching. And it's, again, a skill that we all have, but which we need to relearn in a lot of ways. Because I know when I lived in Cairo, Garda, it was very difficult to get any peace and quiet, because if it wasn't the taxi, it was the man selling food, ding, 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 at 6 o'clock in the morning, outside the window. You know, there's a lot of distractions in life, as well as in Cairo. There's a lot of distractions in life, and therefore, this is a skill that we can start to try and, consciously hone for the benefit of our students. We don't hear what we want to hear, which is a danger in level 1 and level 2. We hear what they're actually saying, and we hear what they're saying, and then we can ask questions about what they mean. Really, really powerful to be able to do that for our students, for our families, for our friends. This isn't just a skill for education, it's a skill that can be used in life. That was quite a lot of information about listening. So I hope it was clear. Level 1 is where we're not really trying. Level 2 is where we're trying a bit harder. And level 3 is where we're really starting to master our listening skills. If you look at, Mona, I can see you've got your hand up and you want to ask a question. I will come to you in a moment. If you look at leadership competencies for our generation, you will see that empathy is there, which is a key coaching skill. You will also see that active listening is there. And active listening is said to be one of the key, most important skills for a leader in our current present world. So it's one to really think about. And I hope you go away from today, if with nothing else, I want you to go away and think about, am I really listening? Or am I thinking about something else? Or what I want for my dinner, or what's on TV later, or how much work I've got to get done? You know, are you really listening to the people who you're speaking to? Mona, you have a question, which is wonderful.
Good evening, Caroline. How
Good
are
evening.
you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Now, I've been teaching for over 3 decades.
Congratulations, Mona. That's good.
Yes.
It's a long time.
I don't know whether this was coaching or simply teaching. This is what I will learn today from you.
Okay.
But my question is, since the students have suffered during COVID and period of 3 years of not listening, not being taught properly in class,
Yeah.
not exactly, yes, not listening, not being attentive, not caring, simply worrying. And they've kind of lost their interest in education. And how do you get these students to listen to us as teachers? How do you motivate them once again? How do you make them enjoy teaching? Would it be through using their kind of enjoyable stuff like Facebook, internet, videos, music, these sorts of things? Especially, you know, in Egypt, it's even harder at university because it's not like in England or in Europe or Asia. It's we've sort of, I'm sorry for saying this, but we've sort of made them hate education during school years, and they come to us in the university with this attitude: we no longer want to listen, we no longer want to learn. You have bored us to death.
And you know what, Mona, and Dr. Lawrence is a great expert on this. As educators, it's our, we share some guilt in providing a curriculum that probably isn't quite so relevant for modern life. And so what we might need to do, and I know the British government is looking at this, is provide a curriculum which is more relevant to the new generation, because things have changed and what they need has changed. So Mona, in terms of coaching, to try and answer your question, I challenge you. What would happen if you asked them, what do they feel would be most beneficial for them to learn? In what way will they learn best? Because I taught for, you know, I still do a tiny bit of teaching just for my nieces who are getting some help from their auntie with their exams. But I think it's important when they are disillusioned with education to go back and ask them what they want and need. And Mona, I would love via Garda to hear what happens if you do that with your students. You know, what impact might that have on them, because they will be taking more ownership. And that's the thing about coaching. The focus isn't on the coach to get things done. It's on the coachee. Similarly, if you're using coaching skills as a teacher, the onus is on you asking them, okay, we know we have to do this, but what's most relevant for you? And what is the best way that we can communicate this so that you understand it best?
Yes, so, I did ask them this term in this new university I've joined. Some of them know what they want. Some still don't give a damn, or they don't care. They just want to, they want us to take attendance and show them how to pass the exams in the easiest way possible. Some of them are rather irresponsible. So this is only what they want from the teacher. And if I don't give them that, they will not attend.
I hear you,
If
Mona.
I
And
may
I,
here, just like, I'm sorry, if I may here, I wanted to share something very similar to what was Mona saying here. Thank you, Dr. Mona, for sharing this, because sometimes we do come across that, especially in these generations, like we do have like a couple of classes, the guys that have spent 2 of 4 year term, 2 of them were in the Corona doing online. So we just like see them for 2 years, and they're supposed to have the full accreditation of the program that we're offering.
yeah,
But the coaching experience is something I actually see, and I have experienced years and years and years back when I was doing my postgraduate degree. My supervisor was an Oxford scholar, and we used to spend like 5 hours reflecting on one chapter of 35 pages. So now that like the years like they pass, and I look back into coaching, that was deep thinking we were doing together. This is actually something that I'm trying to extend to postgraduate students, the ones that come by choice, not the ones that have to do the program.
yeah,
Okay, they just come by choice. They know what's good for them. They choose something they're passionate and curious, really curious about. And they even choose their timetables. We sit together and we reflect deeply. So maybe we can have some hope coming there with people choosing to do the work.
It's a very difficult question, Mona. And also teachers, as I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the call, but teachers that I work with and school leaders across the world are saying exactly the same thing that you're saying. So you're not on your own, and it's not just in Egypt. This is an issue, you know, worldwide. School educators worldwide are saying these things to me. I feel, Mona, that might be a conversation for another time, because I promised God that we would stick on the topic of coaching for today. But in terms of coaching, if I was to give you a little bit of mentoring, I would say to go back to them and ask them what they feel they need and what would inspire them, and in what ways you might be able to empower them. So just to try and sum up, Mona, there's some ideas, but maybe a longer conversation is needed with that one because it's such a massive topic.
Yeah,
I hope
thank you
that's
so
helped,
much.
Mona. You're very welcome.
Yeah, you
Have fun.
did. Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm conscious of the time, and I would like to leave some time at the end of the session for Q&A. So there's one final slide which I'd like to show everybody. And this is a summary really of why coaching skills are useful for educators to develop, to use both within their classrooms, in their lectures, but also, you know, in terms of leadership responsibilities as well. So coaching skills encourage students to take responsibility for their own learning and provide their own accountability. Yes, of course, we have deadlines, but they need to take more responsibility for their own learning and their own actions. Okay, so it's empowering. Actually, coaching has been proved to deliver fast, effective progress and results because students are involved in their learning instead of being passive. Coaching fosters, because of that Socratic questioning, independence and better, stronger critical thinking skills, which actually will help them not just in their education, but also in the workplace. In the same way that accountability will, meeting deadlines in the workplace. It provides a space to partner, and we use that word purposefully because they're in the ICF competencies and in the ICF definition of coaching, a partnering when setting goals and designing learning objectives with our students. In the same way, if we're in a leadership position, then we can partner with our team in order to set goals and design their professional development objectives. It increases self-awareness and deepens self-reflection. As we know, the higher up we go in education, the more important reflective practice is. So if we can start younger, then it will be easier for students to take on those reflective activities that they will have to do when they get to PhD level, for example. It's a way, when we build a good alliance, a good way of working together, it's a way to build up rapport quite quickly, and it opens up lines of communication. It provides challenge because they are more empowered, so they are more engaged. And in the longer term, it will increase their self-confidence and self-esteem. Studies prove this to be true. When a coaching style has been adopted by educators and leaders, people feel more self-confident and they have higher self-esteem. I can't talk about everything related to coaching today, but I hope that the things that I have covered, the 3 cornerstones of coaching, building the alliance, active listening, and Socratic or open questioning, I hope those are 3 things that you can take away and think about in relation to coaching skills for educators. God.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for this eye-opening discussion on coaching. It's like, I mean, I have a lot of ideas that just like jump into my mind. One of them, it would be, can we actually realize this dream of having a world where people are nice to each other, they connect efficiently? There will still be wars. I know everybody wants peace, but yeah, I know it's not that easy to happen, but actually, I think communication is going to be so efficient if this thing is the normativity in communication between people.
Absolutely.
So
if we
we're
can
just like
normalize
looking at the
this,
spread
absolutely.
of public schools. Yeah, this is true. And again, now I do have Dr. Lawrence Brown, and I wish to hear from him on this as well. So do you have reflections to add to us here today?
Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Thank you for sending me this link, and thank you for inviting me. And good evening to everybody, because it's now, well, it's 6 o'clock here in the evening. Caroline, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Lawrence.
Looking
how are
good.
you?
It's been a while.
It has.
How are things up north?
Things are cold and damp in the north of England.
I'm wearing about 5 layers of clothes here, and I've got a heater on down here, but it's still about 9 degrees. I'm still cold. This has been really fascinating, you know, listening to you and watching your sister, watching Claire coach. You're both of an ilk. You're both eloquent, and you're both extremely well prepared and extremely empathetic in the way you do it. It's wonderful. I just love it.
That's very kind, Lawrence.
It's not, well, I'm just reflecting on what I hear, you know. I have to do another one of these for Donna a week in next Wednesday. I'm doing one with Donna in Dubai about qualifications versus the school of life, you know, what we learn and the actual practical skill sets we pick up. The academic side started to fall away in the UK from being useful when I was at school. So in the 70s, many of us understood that we were not being prepared for a world of work and the world of technological change that was coming our way. And so many of us just switched off. And I've realized from 35, 40 years of being a professor or a dean or a coach that actually it goes deeper than that. It's quite simple. The curriculum that restrains us and constrains us like handcuffs at school was designed after the war. And it's still based in a Victorian sort of 100-year-old ethos of sitting students down in chairs, making them listen while the teacher offered information, and their open minds just grabbed at these bits of information. The banking method. And professors are trained to profess their superior knowledge. And it doesn't work, hasn't worked for years, hasn't worked for decades. But the problem, and some of the questions you've been asked this evening, today, have been, yes, it's all very well saying professors and teachers can go out there and engage their students by asking them what they want, but you can't, can you? Because your administration won't allow that. Your examination systems do not allow for variations in the syllabus. And you cannot, when you've got 30 or 40 people in front of you, give them personal attention. It's not possible to do because you have time constraints by the timetable. And you have to finish and tick the boxes for every aspect of your syllabus that you've got through. And it's really just your syllabus you're getting through. The curriculum expands the syllabus into an engaging learning environment that students can engage in. It doesn't happen. All you're doing is tick boxing that you're going through the syllabus. Every week you have to tick a box, because if you don't, your admin get upset. So what's been happening in this country, Ada, and from my experience and my travels around colleges and universities from Pakistan to Australia to China to everywhere, to the Dubai, to the HCT, to Aramco. What I find is that we are so constrained by expectations of what went before. Our examinations are based on memorization and regurgitation, word for word, especially across Asia and in the Middle East. The problem with that is the students are very aware that that's not going to help them with anything in the future, and that it's incredibly out of date. And the secret word is here, choice. They do not have a choice in the topics they want to learn. And if you can give them a choice in the topics, they will become engaged if you give them responsibility, as with that lovely list that Caroline just shared about what is coaching. Coaching is this, this, and this. Accountability will be taken by them if they can work in an area they're more interested and learn their own learning path by hitting links and going to different places. We don't give them a map that's open. We give them a map that's closed to one route. But there's multiple solutions to that topic and how they can learn and understand that topic if you allow them to choose their own learning route through.
And I might well ask if we can just like add courage. So what if the students have the courage to explore the untrodden?
If the teachers have the courage to explore the way they're coaching the students to learn the end topic, if they're allowed that courage by administrators who constrain because they're 50 years old or 60 years old, and it's not the way we did it, they have to do it the way we did it. And they're constrained by, as you said, their stakeholders. They're constrained by the expectations of previous generations.
It's true, Lawrence. And what we're trying to do is empower our viewers, our listeners, by giving them some additional skills that they might be able to use with their classrooms and as leaders in education. So in terms of coaching skills, Lawrence, what value do you think coaching skills have in education?
I think they're imperative. I think you can't do it without coaching, because without coaching, you're not really engaging your clientele, and your clientele are the students individually and as a group. Yeah. So what I've always done since I started teaching in 1990 in colleges was to put them in little groups and allow them to compete together in any way they want with regards to the final learning objectives of the program. And then they're engaging, not listening to me as a coach, but 80% of the work is being done by them, while 20% of it's being done by me walking around, listening in and throwing in open questions to the different groups. Yeah. And that's I think all I've ever done.
Yeah. And I think looking at, how we've been trained to teach and how we can be creative in our own teaching and our delivery is something else that we can all do. And that may, again, Garda, be a discussion for another time, because there's so much, to unpack there. Just before we finish, and I'm conscious of the time, do we have any questions from anybody else in regards to coaching skills for educators or in education?
I would love to actually thank you so much, Caroline. And maybe I would love to welcome Dr. Hatem as well. He's the coach on board. So hello, Dr. Hatem. We're happy to have you today. Okay.
Hello, thank you very much. It's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me in.
Thank you. So again, the floor is open for anyone who has questions.
I have a question, or rather perhaps a comment. May I?
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for your, you've summed up our plight. But I never thought, I never thought that even in England, you have exactly the same problems that we do here in Egypt. It's such a pity, but again, we are sharing, yes, the same problems, except perhaps in Egypt, it's worse, because if I'm teaching English as a second language and English literature it's even more difficult here because of the language barrier. Some of them cannot read a whole novel. They depend on notes. And some of them are not, most of them are not fluent in English. And they didn't get the proper education we had while growing up and studying at school. I was lucky enough to have been in an English school in London for a couple of years. This was a good start for me, but most of the students are not that fortunate, especially those who studied at Arabic schools, what we call Arabic schools or governmental schools in Egypt.
It's very difficult, Mona, for students to access literature with all its nuances and metaphor and everything else when English isn't their first language. And again, Garda, that may be a really great topic for you to discuss on a future occasion. You know, how can we empower students for whom English is not first language to understand and appreciate literature, because that really is a challenge, Mona. I understand. Yeah.
You know, I have to say, Mona, that I might have given you the wrong impression. I've never taught in England.
Oh,
Really? I've
you
studied
said
here.
China and other places.
Yeah, but mostly the Middle East. I've 20 years in the GCC in the Middle East and Pakistan and India. So I'm used to the problem. And I use communities of learning. So I very carefully split the students into groups. A bit like team coaching. If you could imagine the roles of a team, in those little groups, there's a team, there's the same kind of group. So I spend time looking at the students and put them into groups, and then I give them communities of practice, communities of learning, so they're teaching themselves. So when there's a phrase or a concept that's difficult in Arabic, for example, like semiotic theory, throw it to the students as a group, open it up and let them talk in Arabic. 15 seconds later, they come back and they go, okay, got it now. Yeah. But the teacher continually struggling in English, you're banging your head against a brick wall and frustrating this. Let them deal with it.
In Arabic.
Mona, it doesn't all have to be in English. If there is a concept and somebody is very strong in their ways of explaining, then utilize the skills that you have in your classroom. It doesn't all, I always feel like teachers work so hard when they could be drawing upon the skills of those students in front of them, especially where language is concerned. Mr. Mustafa, I can see that you have your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to thank you and all dear friends. My question is, how can we, as a supervisor and a teacher trainer, how can I strike the balance between giving constructive criticism for teachers on their performance and also keep the good relationship with them in order to support them? Is there a way that can help?
I think so, Mr. Mustafa. For example, if I'm mentoring somebody, or if I'm leading a team and a team member isn't performing, as required, then I will have a conversation which will be starting with open questions. For example, what do you think is going well at the moment? And then I would ask a question, what do you think isn't going so well and could be improved? And in the first instance, I then have an understanding of where they are and their interpretation of the situation. And that then gives me foresight, because I can then help them rather than it being, this needs to be improved. Theoretically and hopefully, they'll have recognized some of the things that need to be improved themselves. So then can be a question around, what can you do to improve? In what ways where can you find support? What further training might you need? Instead of saying weakness or criticism, which I know in Arabic may not translate directly, but in English that comes across as quite negative. So I would try and say areas for development or areas for further improvement. I don't know how that translates into Arabic, but that's also something to think about, the way that we use language to communicate what we need to say. We don't want to be ambiguous. We need to be clear if there are certain things that need to be done. But by asking where they think they are at the moment in relation to their strengths and their areas for development, that actually is really useful data or information for us as a supervisor, because we can start to work with that. If they are completely way off the mark and have absolutely no, they have no understanding of what really needs to be done, then that's something that we know we really have to work on. And yet, if they have if they've mentioned something that they think actually, yeah, I'm not sure that's going so well, then it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation about it rather than telling them what you think needs to be done. And in that way, you are building really good rapport with the person in your team, and they will feel much more valued because they're being listened to. And then you can offer the advice and support, or you can give the guidance that's needed. Mr. Mustafa, what are your thoughts on that approach?
Well, I agree completely with you on that, but I thought that most teachers are very sensitive when they are criticized. And this causes a big issue for me as a supervisor. And how can I offer them help without being judgmental or criticizing them?
Absolutely. If somebody comes to me, Mr. Mustafa, and criticizes me, the first thing I am is defensive.
Yeah.
And it makes the atmosphere quite uncomfortable. So
yeah,
I would
we always
suggest...
get blocked when we are criticized. All I think about how to defend myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the first line of defense is attack. So therefore their attitude to you, or the vocabulary they're using, or their body language will be quite negative. So my challenge to you, Mr. Mustafa, is to think about how you're phrasing what you need to say, and also to ask them questions before you start to tell them what needs to be done, because hopefully, fingers crossed, they will already recognize some areas that they need help with or support or need to develop. And that will make the conversation so much easier than you telling them that this is what has to be done. And sometimes we just need to tell. Sometimes we have to say, look, this is what's got to be done, and we have to be brave and bold. But by having that conversation where you ask the open questions first, you're setting a very different tone than a conversation where you're coming in and just telling them what they have to do. Can you see the distinction, the difference between those conversations?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I challenge you to have a go at that, Mustafa. I can see that Garda has a question, and then Riam.
Yes, thank you very much for this nice session. And I'm really happy to have some of my friends like Mr. Mustafa and some of you. I have a little comment here in terms of teaching or dealing with my students. I try to use some kind of feedback, like what I call sandwich feedback or feedback sandwich.
Yep.
Yeah, so I start by giving my students the positive comments or the positive remarks, saying that they are good in things, that you are very good, and then I start giving them the negative points, and then I try by the end of criticizing them or giving them feedback to give them some kind of encouragement and pushing them to work more and more. So
Absolutely.
I think if we use this way with anyone, even with your children, with your teachers, if you are a supervisor, I think it would be a good way to give feedback to them, and this will make them work more and more.
Garda, I really appreciate you sharing that, and the sandwich approach is great, and it really is, again, quite a positive way of providing feedback. And from reading that I've done and experiences that I've had, men and women, gender comes into receiving feedback. So for example, if you were to use the sandwich approach and it was to a male colleague, they may not hear so well the points for improvement. They may take away the things that you said that were really good. A woman is less likely to hear the positive and more likely to absorb the areas for development. So when we're providing feedback, we need to not just think about the personality, but sometimes we have to think about gender as well, because men and women do converse in different ways, and in different cultures that changes as well. So I use the sandwich method a lot, Garda, and I think it's really beneficial. And if you have a really challenging member of staff who doesn't listen very well, isn't an active listener, you also need to ensure that they have understood what needs to be done. So Garda, we could add another level onto that. We could add the mayonnaise, shall we say, or the tomato sauce. We can say to them at the end of the conversation, so what is it that you're taking away from this that needs to be done? And that solves the problem, because then they repeat back to us their targets. Otherwise, we can't ensure that they've really heard what needs to be done. What do you think of that, Garda?
Yes, great, fantastic.
So, just a little additional gift from me to you.
Very nice to think about gender as well.
Yeah, because it really
Yes,
does.
a very
There's
good idea.
an American lady called Deborah Tannen. She writes a lot about language and gender. And I've read some of her books, and they're really interesting in terms of language and gender. So I know we've got lots of professors on the call, so that's something you might want to just have a little look at. Rian, you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you so much for this wonderful, lovely sessions. Indeed, something, amazing, actually, because this topic is very important for me. My question was actually, how about if you're going to mentor people who are older than you? I mean, like double your age, for example. I mean, like they have that kind of locked mindset that they don't prepare themselves, they are not preparing for receiving someone who's younger to really mentoring them. So do you have any tips or tricks for making a beloved floor before we start the work? Thank you.
Oh, I empathize with this question, because I was a team leader at 26 and I had somebody working for me who was 45. And as a very young, inexperienced leader, I had to deal with this, Riham, and I found it very, very difficult. And so my advice to you would be, find somebody in your environment, in your organization, that can mentor you through that. Because I had a great mentor when I was in my 20s, when I was dealing with this very difficult lady who was in her 40s, and that mentor had been through it and experienced it, and was able to really give me not just guidance, but also support. I think also we need to ensure that we are being respectful, which I'm sure you are, but there is that aspect of being respectful but also assertive, and it's quite difficult sometimes to get the measure right. But I would say find somebody that you respect, who you admire as a good leader, who you can speak to talk through what's going on, and they can give you both support and guidance. That would be the best advice I think I could give you. And also, I wish you luck with that. I managed in the end, so you will too, but it does take some practice. Yeah, it can be very challenging. Garda, is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question or?
Yes, I'd like to add something regarding the point of dealing with someone who's double your age. It happens with me a lot as a supervisor. When I visit schools, I find a very veteran teacher, old ones. But here is the thing: when I show my care to them, I'm caring about you and your career. They begin to respect you in return, because generally people get interested in what you say and in what you offer when they feel you care. They don't care how much information you are going to add to them, rather than how much love and how much respect you are going to show. Whether you are old or young, show respect and you will get respect in return, I think.
And Mustafa, that links in also to our coaching skills. So if we can build a way of working together, if we could even ask a question, we can ask them, what's the best way for me to provide feedback for you today? That straight away opens up the question. It's not somebody dictating how this will go. It's working together to create an environment of mutual respect and understanding where hopefully the lines of communication will open. Some great questions today. Thank you, everybody. Mona, I can see you've got your hand up. I don't know if that's from before or if it's a new question.
Just a comment.
Please.
For Reham's little problem.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps you can always compliment them, whoever is older than you in the session or the class, and you can always refer and ask them, what do you think? What would be your suggestion? You need to, kiss their, what, every now and then, perhaps.
Thank you, Mona. It's a tricky one because if Reham needs to assert herself, if she is a very challenging person who she's trying to manage or lead, then yeah, it's a really tricky one. And also, Reham, in terms of culture, dependent on the country that you're in and the culture that you're in, the way you deal with that situation may differ. So I think finding a mentor would be a great idea for you. And I'm sure that Garda can help too, because she's very, very good at what she does. Any further questions?
Thank you.
So here we come to the end of our session today. Thank you so much, Caroline, for this meaty discussion. And thank you, Dr. Lawrence Brown and Dr. Haitham for showing up. Thank you, Dr. Mona, for your conversation as well, your insightful questions. So here we have this little meeting. We are people coming from the coaching background, higher ed background, and English teachers and educators and leaders as well. So it's like a very interesting evening, a very interesting group to brainstorm together about coaching, about the prospect of opening up possibilities for improvement, for empowerment, for safety, for networking, and for liberations. Like if we can just like expand our vocabulary as much as we wish.
I have just popped my website, jigsaw.coach, into the chat, along with my email, should anybody have any follow-up questions. But a good way to contact me also is through Garda.
Okay, definitely. You're going to have a lot of questions coming. And now I'm saving all the links and everything in order to share them on the Facebook thread, because we're keeping this conversation for a few days.
Wonderful.
And I'm going to have the recording as well kept for myself.
Wonderful.
And for whomsoever who wishes to share.
And Dr. Lawrence popped a few really helpful free online courses about coaching skills for educators and other things in the chat. So Garda will be able to post those for everybody. It's wonderful.
I have them. And thank you,
Great.
Dr. Lawrence, for sharing. Thank you, Caroline, for sharing. And thank you, everybody, for coming and for enriching the discussion today.
It was my pleasure. And I hope that was helpful for everybody.
Definitely. So it feeds straight forward to our dream of empowering the teachers. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.